Did the United Nations just defend Islam? Quran burning sparks a global response, and the UN makes a shocking move. In an unprecedented move, the United Nations Human Rights Council, or UNHCR for short, prompted by Pakistan on behalf of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, or OIC for short, has adopted a resolution condemning incidents of Quran burning as acts of religious hatred. This resolution was passed despite objections from multiple Western nations, primarily due to concerns around freedom of speech and expression. As Khalil Hashmi, Pakistan's permanent representative to the United Nations, accused the West of quote unquote lip service to their commitment to preventing religious hatred, critics of the resolution are voicing concerns about the potential for this legislation to stifle free speech. These critics argue that as the UN High Commissioner of Human Rights, Volker Türk said, quote, every national limit on the greater right of free speech and free expression of opinion must be so formulated that its only task, its only outcome can be protection of the individual and not protection of religious doctrines from critical analysis. It remains to be seen how this landmark resolution will impact global conversations about the balance between the respect for religious sentiments and the preservation of free speech.
Okay, what is this going to lead to? Like, who's winning right now? Who has the upper hand? Is this going to lead into a law, like a rule or something?
So, I mean,
'Cause-
this is kind of one of those things where my understanding is that they basically adopted a statement, so to speak. So
Mhm.
it's not like there is formal legislation that's coming in, or that's my understanding, of course. But what this does is set a precedent, right? And what this does is set precedents and give ammunition to people who go, look, what you're doing is considered religious hatred by even the UN. Look, even the
Yes.
United Nations thinks that what you're doing is disgusting and hateful and Islamophobic, all these things, blah, blah, blah. So, I think that's the real consequence. I mean, Armin, it's similar to, Justin Trudeau coming out and talking about the limits of free speech and blah, 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 when he made that disgusting statement in response to some Islamic attacks that happened, Islamic terrorism, and people were blaspheming in response. And in response, Trudeau was like, oh, yeah, I mean, really, these do have limits. And within less than a day, people were weaponizing his statement against
Right.
ex-Muslims. So, in my opinion, that's that's the consequence.
This is going to be devastating. Because a lot of times when people who are pushing for liberal values um, against religious ones or any other illiberal values, they constantly refer to documents put together by United Nations Human Rights Council, right? And now, if this kind of language makes it into, the United Nations Human Rights Council, religious people will constantly now use this as a reference for us. We're like, well, this is the stuff that you consider to be authoritative in this matter. And look, even look how far, look, when you're trying to defend free speech, look how radical you are if you think like burning your Quran should be protected under free expression. Your people, like, these are your people, and they don't agree with you. You are so radical that your own people are standing against you. That's how far gone you are, and they will have a lot more ammo to come after the, arguments. And again, it's so bizarre. This is the Human Rights Council. It's unbelievable that they're talking about Quran burning as a human rights issue.
Yeah,
What are you
exactly.
guys talking about?
Exactly.
What?
Oh my God. There's so much I want to talk about. So first of all, just for more context, on the Human Rights Council, there are 47 council members. There were 28 that voted in favor of the resolution, only 12 that voted against, and there were 7
Wow.
abstentions.
But okay, why is it with the Quran that they do? Why is it not with the Bible that these people get like this? Why is it with always with the Quran? Also, why in response to this, many people burn the Swedish flag? How come none of these people come and condemn that? I mean, I don't condemn it. You burn as much as, well, I mean, it's not good for the environment, but other than that, go ahead, right? But why are they not consistent? Like, are they going to burning the Swedish flag in Islamic countries? Is that going to, are they going to condemn that in the same way? Because they
No.
constantly are, yeah.
Armin, why are they not consistent? Because they're not consistent. They're not consistent. We know this. And it's on their face not consistent. There's so many quotes that I want to read regarding this.
But
It so oh my god. Where did it go? So I want to read this quote from Reuters talking about this decision. And so Mark Limon, director of the Geneva-based Universal Rights Group, said the outcome showed, quote, the West is in full retreat at the Human Rights Council. They are increasingly losing support and losing the argument, he said. Michelle Taylor, the U.S. permanent representative to the UNHCR, said the United States' concerns about the initiative were not taken seriously. Quote, I believe with a little more time and a little more open discussion, we would have found a way forward together on this resolution, she said. And basically, I'm looking for the quote right now, but there are quotes from the Pakistani officials that pushed this forward that make it so blatantly clear that this is just about the Quran, that this is not actually about human rights, that this is not actually about religious hatred. It's just about preserving their holy book. That's it. That's it. It's so like bald on its face obvious, to the point that one of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Türk, he said, quote, speech inflammatory acts against Muslims, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and actions and speech that target Christians or minority groups such as Ahmadis, Baha'is, or Yazidis are manifestations of utter disrespect. They are offensive, irresponsible, and wrong. You know who like persecutes Ahmadis the most? The literal state of Pakistan,
mm,
that in its constitution had a constitutional amendment to takfir Ahmadis. It's
yeah,
just like the
they're,
levels of hypocrisy are so brutal and blatant. Like I can barely deal with it.
let me translate what you're saying, okay, for people who don't understand. Ahmadis are a sect of it's a sect of Islam, right, which in Pakistan they are discriminated against by law. Like it is it is within the law that they need to be discriminated against, so much so that you have to agree that these people are not Muslims. You have to sign that off to be able to get your passport in Pakistan. That is a requirement for you to get a passport, to announce that these people are not Muslim. So a country that is actively discriminating against a sect of a group of Muslims, so much so, so transparently and openly, and they're proud of it, like they advertise that they're discriminating against a group of Muslims. This is not something they hide. This is something that they brag about. They are trying to, they are leading this war against burning Quran as with the excuse that this is hatred against Muslims. Like, look at the priorities again. In Pakistan, a country that tries to make excuses for China discriminating against Muslims, to the point that you put 1 million of them in a concentration camp for the crime of being Muslim. So that is, you make excuses for that, and you discriminate against Muslims yourself as a country. But no, it's pieces of paper that needs protection. That is your priority. When you go to the United Nations Human Rights Council, the thing that you want to bring up, the Muslims that you want to protect are not the Muslims in China. It's not the Muslims in your own country that you're actively discriminating against. You're worried about in Sweden a book being burned. That's your priority. That's what you're trying to protect. Again, when I say these movements, these acts, this show that is trying to portray itself as a defense of Muslims is actually anti-Muslim. So look at the countries that are pushing these laws and these standards in defense of Muslims. They are places where it's hard to be Muslim, where it's Muslims have less lower standards of living, lower levels of well-being, lower levels of security, lower levels of happiness, everything. By every measure, they're living lesser lives than Muslims who live in Sweden, Muslims who live in Canada, Muslims who live in United States. Those Muslims are living better lives because of these values, because of these rights, because of these standards that these countries have.
I cannot agree
So
more.
no,
I
yeah,
have
this is
I have a friend who is a Pakistani Muslim, and he says I would rather be a Muslim in America than anywhere else, because here I get to practice Islam how I dictate, how it feels right to me, and how I have freedom over my lifestyle. Versus when he was living in Pakistan, he did not have that freedom. He did not have that ability. The way that he wanted to practice his own faith was monitored and dictated by others, and he had to flee because he was half American and he literally had to flee the country because of the discrimination and persecution against him, the threat to his life. And
exactly.
these people they want to lecture us. They want to lecture us about religious hatred.
Exactly. So, guys, here's the thing. A lot of people might think this is something strange to say, but it is pro-Muslim. It is pro-Muslim to fight for the right to burn the Quran.
100%. Break it down. Break it down for anyone who's confused.
Because it is pro-human to fight for the right of freedom of expression. So it's pro-Muslim because it's pro-human. It's pro-everybody. When we fight for liberal values, when we fight for secularism, when we fight for the right for freedom of expression, it is not for the sake of atheists having better lives. It is for the sake of everyone living better lives, including Muslims. So you might think that we are anti-Muslim when we fight for this right, but we are pro-Muslim. We are anti-Islam, but we are pro-Muslim. We're anti-Christianity, but we're pro-Christian because we are pro-human.
We would be anti-Muslim if we defended or caped for any form of blasphemy law and imposition on free speech, because do you, if anyone who doesn't know, I know Armin knows, who gets murdered and criminalized and persecuted under blasphemy laws the most? Empirically, it is Muslims.
Mm.
More Muslims are killed for blasphemy accusations than any other group of people. And the highest rates, I believe the highest, if not the highest, among the highest of these murders, persecutions, criminalizations that happen are all concentrated in Pakistan.
Let me translate what Susie just told you, okay? We want to fight for your right to express your religion. But guess what? Your religion and every other religion is blasphemy in someone else's religion. So when we defend blasphemy, the right to blaspheme, that is the only way to defend your right to express your religion. Because if we want to defend your right to express your religion, we cannot be selective with the right to blaspheme. We cannot say that, oh, you have the right, but other people don't. If you removed other people's right to express whatever they want to express, including blaspheming against your religion, then that standard would be applied to you as well. And guess what? Your entire religion is blasphemy. Every religion is blasphemy against someone else's religion.
And any scientific advancement whatsoever is blasphemy against pretty much all religions.
If your excuse for removing the right to express by burning the Quran, that form of expression, what is the excuse? The excuse that it hurts Muslim sentiments, it hurts their feelings. Have you read the Quran? Have you read the Bible? Half of that goddamn book is against us. Every page I open, there's a chance that there's a verse in there that is talking about kafirun. You know who are the kafirun? I am kafirun. Susie is kafirun. The 90% of the people in the live chat are kafirun. I think more than 90%, maybe the entirety of the live chat. And read how the Quran talks about the kafirun, which is the non-believers. That is by far worse than anything somebody could do with burning the Quran. The burning the Quran is against the book. The Quran itself is against a group of people. So if you are talking about hurt sentiments, then that's by that standard, the entirety of the Quran should be banned. The Bible should be banned. If applying the rule of, hey, this is hurting people's sentiment, so let's ban it, applying that rule, if it's not selective, if it's consistent, would in effect ban the Quran, ban the Bible, unless you want to be selective about how you apply this rule.
And the answer is yes, they do want to be selective. The answer is yes, of course they want to be selective. And this is patently not about the humans who are legitimately harmed and persecuted around the world, who we very consistently talk about and bring attention to.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it makes me so pissed. So Blaze is saying basically, so what can we do about this problem? That is my main question. Okay, so actually, before I go into that, I want to answer a question from D. So D is saying, I'm a bit confused about United Nations resolutions. I've read that adopted resolutions are binding and non-binding. Can you clarify for us? So my understanding is that different resolutions are binding depending on what body of the United Nations they come from. And resolutions from the UNHCR are generally non-binding, which means that they do not have the force of international law behind them, and they are not mandatory for member states to implement. So that's like good news. You know, it's basically more just like a statement more than anything else, but that statement is still a very dangerous precedent, as we were saying earlier. So to answer Blaze's question about like what can we do, I think personally, like obviously we don't have the power of the UN. The UNHCR is the only global body of governments dedicated to human rights. And this is what they passed. And basically, I think it now more than ever, we need to reiterate why this is important. We need to reiterate to people why this is worth defending. We need to reiterate to people the importance of it, and that it's not simply about burning a book because you hate the religion or hate people. This is about free expression, and free expression is the prerequisite to every single other right we can afford or wish to attain. Period. That's what the importance is. So I honestly just encourage people to have conversations about this, to teach people the value of this in your daily life, because we need more of the general population to really understand and hold within our hearts why free expression is such a primary value. If there isn't an understanding and appreciation of that within populations around the world, then there isn't going to be outcry when there's stuff like this. And then there also isn't going to be a will and desire to push back. There aren't going to be calls for this to be ameliorated, right? So that's what I like to do. And so for me personally, when I do blasphemy, when I do desecration, blah, 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 I see it as a conversation starter more than anything else. And it gives me an opportunity to educate people when they're like, why are you doing this? Blah, blah, blah. I've, when I used to do the Quran licking a few years ago more often, um, I would have Muslims like message me like super pissed and like have in my DMs, blah blah blah. And if I had the time and availability, I'd actually like talk to them and be like, no, I have nothing against you. Like, I hope you have a good Ramadan. Like, but
Hmm.
and then I explained to them why I do it, and they're like, oh, actually, like, I still don't like that you do it, but I understand why you're doing it now. And I'm like, great, you don't have to like it. I don't need you to like it. I'm not asking you to like it, but I just kind of want to have a conversation about like why this is important. So personally, all of us as individuals with the limited power that we have, I think that that's the best thing that we can do right now.
Yeah, and I think if it's safe, I do suggest people desecrating the Quran. And maybe burning is not the best idea because you might burn your house down, and that would be not good. So I suggest to somebody in a safe area that this is not going to have major consequences for them. If they want to participate to normalize this, I suggest spitting on the Quran, tearing it apart, something that is less dangerous and also less costly for the environment, right? And it's also more insulting, to be honest, if you spit on the Quran than burning it. But so cheaper, and also do one page at a time. Don't do the entire thing, so you could have enough pages for later as well. I do want to say that I want
Always
people to
helping us
understand
be
when,
cost efficient,
yeah,
cost efficient with our desecration.
yeah. I do also want to mention this is not about hating the Quran. I'm not when Susanna says that, it doesn't mean that we don't hate the Quran. I do hate the Quran's teachings, right? But this is not about that. Even if it was, even if it was a book that we liked, and people were trying to pass laws or using threats as a way to silence people for insulting it, then we would still be like, okay guys, we need to push back, right? Even if it was an amazing book, even if it was a book that was like fantastic, um then but there were some people loved the book so much that they wanted to threaten or pass laws against anybody who wanted to insult it. I would, I would be, I would go and desecrate that book. Okay, so again, these are two separate things. Our mm, the work that we do against Islam is different from what we do when we burn the Quran. We're not trying to take a position against Islam when we're burning the Quran. For that, we do other things. When we burn the Quran, this is about, or when we desecrate the Quran, this is about trying to make a point, trying to say that you cannot, it needs to backfire. The methodology of intimidating people or silencing them using law, it shouldn't work. When they try to do that, we suggest that there needs to be a response to signal to the world that when you try to use these methods into getting people to submit, into not saying the things you don't like, it backfires. So the methodology is less effective, so they don't use it for other things. We do have, I'm writing these things down because I'm gonna have a show about this on the Persian show.
Mm, mm, mm.
So it's important for me to be able to, but we have some super chats. Do you want to highlight this?
Yeah. Newman gave a super chat. Thank you, Newman, saying, Susie, what happened to your voice? Nothing happened to my voice. I'll be completely honest. I'm staying at a friend's house and I don't want to wake him up right now. um,
It
Erican,
sounds more like radio, but thank you for the super chat. But it sounds better.
oh,
You sound like you're on the radio. Yeah.
more sultry.
Sounds right. Yes,
Welcome
yes.
to 80s Republic News. I'm Susanna
Yeah,
McIntyre.
right.
This is
Yeah, that's
KQOW.
good.
um, uh, Erican, thank you for the super chat. He's saying they can't accept a brief compromise in that direction. No. And the problem is that the OAIC, no, excuse me, OIC, it has like 57 members in it. That's a large body in within the
Mm,
UN. And is there any equivalent to any other religion than the what is it? The Organization of Islamic Cooperation? Is there any
I don't
comparable
know.
organization that's like the Organization of Christian Cooperation. I don't think so. I've never heard of such a
Mm.
thing. Oh my god.
You know why they here's the thing.
Hmm.
The reason why they are taken so seriously is because they're more sensitive, right? And that's why people submit to them, because the reaction is just so much more intense. So we can't let that be a way for people to get the upper hand. That should not be allowed. We're like, no, your sensitivity is not a good excuse for us for why we should take you more seriously. That's not how international affairs should be working. Right? I don't understand.
No,
All
I
right.
completely agree. I mean, when faced with situations like this, especially recently, I mean, I think about, there were two ex-Muslim atheists in Iran who were hanged to death in the most brutal way less than 6 months ago for burning the Quran. Where was the
Mm,
international condemnation? There was some, but not on the level of the UNHCR.
exactly.
So I think about those men. And when I think about those men, I'm like, I would do this
So
1,000 times more. I would do this 1,000 times more. Damn the
very good.
consequences. No one deserves to be murdered for this. No one deserves to be murdered for this. No one deserves to be terrorized for this. For a few pieces of paper. For a few pieces of paper. So,
You're
yeah.
making some very good points. I'm writing these down. I'm writing these down for the
Thank you.
show.
Anyways, back to the super chats. Gasian American said, "Thank you for the super chat. Interesting how the Communist Party of China is okay with thought reform, but not Quran burning. They also
Mm.
claim that this is what Western free speech gets you."
But they
I mean,
themselves are not.
yeah,
This is look at the priorities. Like, we will arrest you for being Muslim and
for
put you
having a
in
beard, for not
for
smoking,
yeah
for not eating pork. Guys, I'm
yeah
not
yeah
exaggerating.
yeah. But Quran, don't burn that. Look at the priorities. Like, this is papers over humans.
Meanwhile, they like tear down historic mosques
Yeah.
in Xinjiang.
They destroy people's properties, Muslims' properties, by force, and they're like, oh, but don't burn the Quran. Look, dear Muslims, look, if you where you have spent your sensitivity, like you had, because you have focused so much on defending your prophet's honor and the holiness of your core book. People are more afraid of offending your religion than hurting you. They are hurting you because you have focused on paper and a dead prophet. Even, here's the thing, based on your own beliefs, your prophet is doing fine. He's in heaven. No matter how much you insult him, nothing is going to happen to him. The Muslims are suffering on the planet. They're alive. Your prophet is in heaven. Why would he doesn't need you to protect him? He's having the best time. Why can't you focus on defending fellow Muslims instead of the one that is dead? I don't understand your priorities. And look at their world's response. They are they are not afraid of hurting you, but they're afraid of hurting your book. If you had spent more time being this sensitive about your fellow Muslims, maybe they would be they would be afraid of something else, something that it would be good for them to be afraid of. Okay.
The brother makes a very good point. And here's the thing, I was talking to D about this, our lovely editor D. Everyone say thank you to D for being such an amazing editor and volunteer. Um, and she made such a good point. She said to me, she was like, this is so discouraging, especially considering that the actual Muslims that are there in Sweden, that were there for this event, that were there for the Islamophobic event of him burning the Quran at the mosque, the actual Swedish Muslims that were there were chill. They were chill. The Swedish Muslims that were there to counter protest, as is their constitutional right. And being interviewed
Right.
by reporters, they were like, "To be honest, I don't hate this man. Like, I feel sad for him." There were some people saying a few insults. There was like one person that tried to throw a rock, but he was like stopped by the police. And that was it. It was minor. The Swedish Muslims themselves, who saw this with their own eyes, were more chill than freaking Pakistan. I mean, well, that's not surprising, but you get my point.
Yeah. Yeah, but because it's becoming more normalized, and because why is it becoming normalized? It's because more people are doing it. Here's the thing: if you are worried about Muslims being offended about all of this, then do it more. Because if you do it more, at some point the sensitivity is going to go away, and this is better for Muslims as well because they're going to be more at peace if they don't care. If we get to a point where Quran burning is such a normal thing that Muslims don't get offended about it, well, it's good for their own mental health then. Right? You got to a point where it's
Or they
normalized.
can even they can even get offended. They can even get offended, but it's like, am I
Right.
gonna go burn down a city because of it? As happened like 2 years ago in Sweden, in Malmo, whatever you call it. Like, no. Oh my god. Um,
Yeah.
so finally we have another super chat from Asian
Yes.
American. And I almost started laughing in the middle of you making a very serious point because of this. Asian American said, "Thank you for the super chat. I desecrate the Chinese holy texts, but the communists beat me to the punch."
Oh my god. And we got
And
this.
we
And we
got
also
one,
got a $10. Yeah,
yeah,
one more.
$10 super chat from Kenny with no
Thank you.
message, just a super chat. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
Kenny.
Kenny.
Just the support. Thank you so much, Kenny. I appreciate that. We also forgot oh wait, I forgot to highlight something. We also forgot to read the comments. Let's always remember to read the comments on the news that D goes and selects for us, right? So
Oh
one
yeah.
person says, can't Allah fight for himself? Right? So that's a question. This is one person is saying this. Another person is saying it's just a book, grow up. This last person is saying, after burning down Paris, they still believe they are victims. This I don't agree with at all. I don't like this message. I mean, I'm glad that D is highlighting them so that we could respond to it. But first of all, burning down Paris was not Islam related. I mean, even the parts that we are condemning, it's
Hmm.
not. It wasn't an Islam thing. It was more.
Not
It was a different
necessarily at
thing, though.
all.
Not yeah, it wasn't. And also, when you say they, you're doing collective blaming. Okay, the people who are upset about the Quran being burned in Sweden, they're not like they didn't all. They weren't in Paris. Most of them are not even in Paris. Like, why are you taking the actions of some people and then collectively blaming an entire community for it? That's not. That's not right. That's not right at all. That doesn't make any sense. But if I don't know, it's obvious to me. We have explained this so many times. I don't know if I should need to explain it here. Why that doesn't, why collective mindset and collective blaming doesn't make any sense. So
Hmm.
we're against
Hmm.
that for sure.
Hmm.
Anyways, guys, just a warning. I drank a lot of water before the show, so I'm gonna need multiple breaks during the show. So for the next news, I'm gonna put myself down, but I'll be right back. Okay? I don't know. I stay
That's so
hydrated. Okay,
funny.
but
I stay
it's not.
hydrated. Good for you, sir. Okay, anti-aging. It's good for your body. But before the show, we spent like less than a half an hour together, and you had to pee twice.
Yeah. Wait. When I got another super chat. Let's read this one before I clap for the next news. Erkin.
Okay, thank you for the super chat. It's saying the author of the Quran has NPD. He can't fight for himself, hence has to assign the blame to someone else. I think he's saying narcissistic personality disorder. I think that's what NPD means.
Okay, usually I don't agree with using um, psychological, disorder terms on people because we're not experts and we don't know how to apply that. But because we're talking about a fictional character, if you're talking about Allah and everything is made up, I think for fictional characters is completely fine. Unless you're talking about who actually wrote the Quran, then I disagree with that because this was more of a
Let's not get
political.
into the historicity of the Quran.
Okay.
or Muhammad.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay. So that's good.
but
All
needless
right.
to say, cult leaders are malignant narcissists. So I'm not gonna, yeah, disagree with you.